I have always been bivocational. I have not always had to be bivocational, but I have always chosen to be bivocational. In the beginning, it was a necessity. I pastored a church that couldn't feed me. I pastored a church that couldn't feed itself, that couldn't keep its lights on, that couldn't keep its utilities on. The only way I could pastor the church was go to work and take most of my salary and throw it in the church to keep it going. When I ran out of money, my mother started putting her money in it. My mother's sister told her, they call her Toot, they say, Toot, don't put all your money in that boy's church. You gotta be wise, you're getting older, it ain't gonna be nothing. Don't put all your money in that church. And my mother kept right on sewing. As usual, Mama was right. I come to learn that from those days to now, that there are things that you learn outside of the household of faith that strengthen your understanding of faith, that keeps you in touch with ordinary people, that keeps you tied into the culture. I like to interact with people. I don't like to be isolated. I don't like to be put in a cage. I don't live in my house and not come out. I still go to Kroger's, pick out my chicken wings, see what's going on in the world. Now I'm bivocational. I have a ministry, but I also have a business. My business centers around entertainment and real estate. And we've been doing some amazing things in entertainment. I learned a lot about entertainment. I get scripts from all over the world. I look at scripts, I look at stories all the time. And I have learned that the worst stories are stories that do not depict realistic characters. Realistic characters are different from idealistic characters. It's interesting, we spend all of our lives trying to act like ideal people, but we don't want to watch ideal people. Because ideal people are boring. And because ideal people are not realistic. Because ideal people are fictitious. We want reality. Realistic characters demands that the character has an arc and that they have a conflict. That they have an arc in their life, that we can watch them go through ups and downs and ins and outs and back and forth, and that they have a conflict. That is to say that if you've lived long enough, you've learned that there's a little bit of bad in the best person. And there's a little bit of good in the worst person. And you cannot really judge a person just by one moment or one scene out of their lives. I know what we say in public, but down in our hearts we realize that you can catch a person at a bad season in their life and them not be as effective as they are in other seasons. This is why David would rather be judged by God than to be judged by man. Because you can do 100 things right and do one thing wrong, and man will always talk about what you did wrong and never remember what you did right. God uses ordinary people. He does in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, he lets us see all into the personal lives of the people that he called. Thank God for the Old Testament, because it gives us a realistic view of people who were good and bad, who were strong and weak, who were right and wrong, who were victorious and victimized. It helps us to assess our own life, that your life is not going to be a straight line. It's not going to be a straight horizontal. There's going to be peaks and valleys and uprisings and downsettings. Such is life. Somebody was talking to me the other day about something they were going through, and I told them life is doing what life does. Life is just doing what life does. It's not a demonic attack. It's not spiritual warfare. Life is just doing what life does. It gives and it takes. It makes you laugh. It makes you cry. It has moments of victory and it has moments of defeat. Such is the case with the character before us today. He's an interesting character. I must admit that if I were Jesus, I probably would not knowingly have gotten involved with this guy. There are certain people, if you get involved with them, they're going to be a lot of work. All of us going to be some work. But there are certain people it's going to be a lot of work. This guy was a lot of work. I would have tried to, if I only had 12 guys in 3 years to get it all done, I'd try to pick 12 of the best to make it easy so that I didn't have to waste time ministering inwardly while I'm trying to reach outwardly. But such is life. Such is life. You're always ministering outwardly and inwardly simultaneously. You're always trying to be a message to the world and not lose your own house. You're always trying to encourage somebody and wrestling with discouragement inside of yourself. Where are my real people at? But Jesus had to get a hold of this guy because this guy did not know who he was. When Jesus first met him, he is one of the first disciples Jesus picked. This guy thought he was just a businessman. He thought he was a business owner. He had a fishing company. He had a fishing fleet. He went out every day to fish. When Jesus first met him, that's how he saw himself, as a fisherman. And Jesus had a higher vision of him and said, I will make you fishers of men. Right now you're fishers of fish. You're doing what you're going to do on a lower level. Your history is always a glimpse of what you're going to do in your destiny. God's going to take something that you already did and take it to the next level and use it to bless you. You're going to the next dimension. You're still going to be fishing, but you're going to fish in another kind of way. And he gets a hold of Peter, and he comes along on Peter at a time that Peter is washing his nets. He's washing his nets. He thought he was through for the day. And Jesus walks down to the seashore, and Peter and Andrew are washing their nets. And Jesus says to him, can I use your boat? Suppose Peter had said no. That's my boat. I don't know you. I might have said no. Don't look at me all funny. Can I use your car? That's the equivalent of somebody strange you don't know just walking up to you saying, can I borrow your car? Peter's boat was his livelihood. But he had a giving spirit. That might be why God chose him. He had a giving, generous spirit. The very thing that all your friends tell you to stop being, that might be the very thing that got his whole life changed. He had not become cynical yet. He had not become so suspicious yet. Peter let a stranger borrow his boat. I got to bring it down where you can see the level of sacrifice. Somebody just walk up to you at 7-Eleven and say, let me use your car for a minute. You say, get out of here. And all of a sudden, something happens. Because what Jesus is really teaching Peter is, listen to this, his business is his platform. Peter's business becomes Christ's platform. I put you in business so you could have this moment. I didn't put you in this business about the fish. I started you out as a fisherman because I knew I was coming and I was going to need somebody I could trust to take me across the waters. I'm positioning you for purpose, not for profit. I was over in Fort Worth, and they're doing a lot of construction over in Fort Worth. And they haven't taught my GPS that you can't turn left here because they got this concrete temporary wall built up here, and so you can't turn left and the GPS is spinning. And people are behind me blowing, and I'm fussing, and it's embarrassing, and I'm irritated, and I'm not feeling real bishopy at the moment. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of the moments that I have every now and then that I just, if I don't take my medication, I turn into somebody else. And I was having one of them moments. It was a detour. Things weren't laid out like they used to be. And I couldn't get there like I used to. And so I had to drive in confusion and forlornment, and I didn't know exactly where I was, and I didn't know what I needed to do to get straightened back out. But I always told my sister, as long as you got gas, you'll be all right. I had gas, so I kept on driving. I was lost, but I kept on driving. I was confused, but I kept on driving. See, you can, y'all don't hear me. You can be lost and still keep going. You can be lost and still go through the motions. You can be lost and still laugh at jokes and still go to the movies and still do stuff. And to the other drivers, they can't see that you lost because you still driving, but down on the inside was this nagging feeling that some kind of way I got my life off track, and I should have been there by now. I should have been there by now. I should have been there by now. I know I should have been there by now. I thought I'd be there by 30. I thought I'd be there by 35. I thought I'd be there by 42. I thought I'd be there by 51. But I got lost. I got lost. And I can't even tell nobody that I'm lost. Because people with GPSs ain't supposed to get lost. I got an Apple phone. I'm not supposed to be lost. I had everything to work with. I had everything to work with. I didn't come from no bad home. I didn't come from no bad. I had everything to work with. But I still got lost. And I couldn't get there the way I expected to get there because it was under construction and it was shut down and it was messed up. And Jesus had risen from the dead and he was getting ready to throw this massive party for all the people who've been faithful, and it used to be me. But I got lost. I would have been helping plan the meeting at Galilee. I can tell by the way the disciples act when I come around that I'm not really one of them anymore. And the only thing bad about being the ex is that when you aren't that, who are you? First Lady Obama is First Lady Obama. First Lady Trump is First Lady Trump. And that comes with all kinds of stuff that goes along with being that. I'm not saying she's not gifted in her own right. Both of them are strong in their own right. But there's some perks that come through who you're connected to. There were perks for being a disciple, but not an ex. People love the First Lady till the pastor died. No. You don't like it, but that's a fact. There's some first ladies in this room that'll tell you, you was getting the flowers and the roses and the cakes and everything. Yeah. Your husband died, and they said, we have to take the parsonage back. That's how it works. See, Peter has not spent his life building up him. He spent his life building up Jesus. He's put his business on hold for 3 years. He's lost his client base. He's lost his contacts. A lot can happen in 3 years. And Peter is lost. And even though he got called with Andrew, Andrew can't call him back. And that's why this text is important to me. Because when Jesus rose up from the dead and showed himself alive, he told the woman, he said, go tell the disciples. And Peter. My car, it started spinning. This little thing started spinning on my GPS system, and then after a while, it said rerouting. I came to tell you about a God who can reroute you. I came to tell you about a God who can reroute a mess and a messy situation, and you've been down to nothing, and everybody's looking at you funny, and you embarrass your family, and you embarrass yourself, and you embarrass your name and everything, I came to tell you that God is spinning. And when he gets through spinning, he's going to reroute you into something that you never had before. So Jesus says, go tell the disciples and Peter. I don't know whether he's even considered a disciple anymore, but I have not given up on him. I don't know whether he'll be in the circle or not, but I still got a plan for him. I don't know whether they like him or not, but I still got a plan for his life. I don't know whether they accept him or not, but I call him by his name, like I called him the first time, like I called him a rock, like I called him to walk on the water, like I called him to the Mount of Transfiguration. All them other times I called him, he looked like an asset. But I call you in spite of being a liability. I call you when your back's up against the wall. I call you when you messed up your past. I call you when you've been locked up in jail. I call you when you've been in a scandal. I call you when everybody's talking about you like a dog. I call you though you had a baby out of wedlock. I call you though you've been strung out on drugs. I call you, I call you, I call you. I call you, I call you, I call you. I call you by your name, not your title, not your degree, not your pedigree, not how much money you got, not how talented you are. And Peter, I want you back.
There's a story in 2 Samuel chapter 12, and it says this in verse 3, but the poor man had nothing except one little lamb which he had brought and nourished. Notice that. Listen, and it grew up together with him, listen to the specific wording, and with his children. It ate of his own food, drank from his own cup, and lay in his bed or his bosom, and it was like a daughter to him. In the text in 2 Samuel 12, Nathan was given an assignment from God to confront David about the sin that he had committed. He had committed adultery, and he had killed Bathsheba's husband to cover it up. He had spun a web of lies, and he was not the same man that he used to be. He's not the same David that we read about, who would spend hours in worship, private meditation and worship, playing the harp, writing songs of adoration to God. Something had shifted in this text. He was proud now. He was arrogant. As a matter of fact, the Bible said in 2 Samuel chapter 8 that David had gotten him a name. We would say he's made a name for himself. The scripture puts it that way, that he got himself a name. He had become famous. He was so famous that they were writing songs about him. The women would sing songs about David. David's name was so popular that mothers were naming their babies after they gave birth after King David. They would name their babies David. He had gotten him a name, but something had shifted in his heart. He no longer was a man after God's heart, but now he was living in deceit and living in a lie and living in adultery and living in sin and pretending. And Nathan the prophet was given the assignment to go confront this man who had become so vicious, so bloody, that he had killed an innocent man named Uriah to cover up his own sin. So there's no doubt that Nathan was even probably approaching the palace that day with consternation and fear and worry that he could just turn on me and kill me right there on the spot. And so he's going through his mind as he's approaching the palace. I could see his pace slow down. I could see him maybe kicking a rock down the road or whatever, just trying to ponder in his mind, what am I going to say? How can I somehow find that David that used to have a heart after God, who loved him with all of his heart, mind, soul, and strength? How can I reach him if there's a little flicker or flame left of the man that he once was, that was so passionate for God, and now that he's famous and he's powerful and he's got wealth and palace and everything that the world can offer, and his heart is so cold. And as he approaches the palace, he says, I know what I'll do. When it's all said and done, if there's anything left of David, of the man he used to be, the spiritual, loving God man that he used to be, I'll tell a story about a shepherd and a lamb. And he walked into the palace that day, and David was sitting on his throne. And David knew that he was a prophet from God. And David looked at him, and when he did, he said back to him, David, I want to tell you a story. He said, what kind of story? He said, it's a story about a lamb. And suddenly a little flicker of the love that David once had when he was a little shepherd boy, watching his father's sheep, fighting bears and fighting lions to guard the sheep, the precious sheep, the lambs. He would hold them in his arms. And he said, I want to tell you. He said, then tell me the story. And he said, there once was a rich man and there once was a poor man, and they both lived in the same city. And they both were in the same location, one on one side of town and one on the other. The rich man held wealth and power and prestige. David's leaning in now, and he's beginning to listen. He had flocks without number. He had hired shepherds who tended after his flocks by the hundreds and thousands. He had a beautiful home, and he was prominent, and he was powerful, and he had all that you could imagine. And living in the same city on the other side of town was a poor man. This poor man had times when his family went to bed hungry. They had no wealth. They had no house to speak of. It was just a shack. They were just poor people. A man married to his wife, and they had a little boy and a little girl. They had children. They were unknown and unimportant. The total opposite of the rich man was the poor man. He only had one possession that we're told of in the text. He had one lamb. One little lamb is all that he possessed. They lived in the same city, but they were worlds apart. One powerful, famous, with wealth, with fame, with flocks without number, thousands and thousands of lambs, and one family that's poor and unimportant and unknown by anyone, and all they had in their home. The Bible said they had it in their home as a part of their family, one little lamb.
Have you ever wished I would have gotten this day started different than what I did? You know, don't ever waste a day. You think about time differently as you get older. I think when you're in your 20s and maybe even 30s and maybe even 40s, you don't think too much about time. But a few years ago, it occurred to me that 2/3 of my life was over. And I just became much more aware of time and how foolish it is to waste any day that you have. You know, there's something really interesting about time. We all get the same amount in a day. Every day is 24 hours. And some people are very, very fruitful and effective, and some people just waste their time day after day after day. And that's a choice that we make. But there's one thing about time. Once it goes by, you never get it back. So how tragic it is to waste any day of your life. I think we need to live every day like it was our very last one, and live it to the absolute fullest that we can live it. So I want to just give you a few things that I think will help you maybe get your day going in the right direction and maybe affect the whole rest of your day. And I hope it helps you every single day of your life. What are some of your mornings like? Do you go to bed intending to get up and spend time with God, but then when the alarm goes off, you hit the snooze? Then you hit the snooze again, and then you hit the snooze again. And then you've laid in bed too long, and so then you get up. Of course, now you have no time for anything. And you're in a frenzy, and you're in a rush, and so that makes you grouchy. And of course, the devil will play the game with you, and he'll make sure that that's the day you can't find your car keys, and that's the day nobody does anything that's right. And then you've yelled at the kids, and now you're feeling bad about that. And your mom gave you a call to say good morning. You grouched at her because you didn't have time, so now you feel bad about that. And you get in your car and you get down almost to the entrance to your subdivision. You realize you left your cell phone at home, and so that adds to your frustration. Now you got to hurry up and go back and get that. Then you get in the house and you can't find it. Then you get on the highway and the traffic's bad, and you know you're going to be late for work, so you're thinking of all the excuses you can give. And you finally get there, and you're basically frustrated, upset, got this little weight of condemnation on you because of the way you acted. You know you should have spent time with God. You didn't do it. And the whole day basically just becomes a nightmare. Anybody been there? Done that? Now, if you're honest, you know that more than any other thing, the devil will fight you on your time with God. And the reason he does that is because that is more valuable to you than any other thing. Your time, your personal time with God is more valuable to you than you being in this conference. It is the most important thing. And anytime we think that we're going to get it all just through listening to somebody's CDs and going to church once a week or twice a week or going to a couple of conferences a year, you're totally wrong. Because I'll tell you what you get when you do that. I'll tell you what you've gotten here this weekend. You've gotten pieces of great stuff. And now if you're smart, you'll go home and you'll take the notes that you have, or you'll buy the CDs from the conference or whatever session really meant a lot to you. And then you'll really get down to doing your own study. Hearing somebody else is not good enough. You got to study. If you want to be victorious, you have to study. Well, Joyce, you mean to tell me just listening to you every morning isn't enough? Not really. I'm not God. I'm a teacher. And I believe that I've got a lot of good information and a strong teaching gift, but what I found in my own life was I got all this information. I mean, I was like, when I really got serious about my walk with God, I was in a conference every time I turned around, and CDs and everything I could get my hand on, and TV programs and radio programs, and it just seemed like, why isn't it working? I'd been there, done that, had the t-shirt, had the CDs. I knew everything you could possibly know about spiritual warfare, and yet the devil still had the upper hand in my life. And none of it really began to fall into place for me until I started really spending time with God every day. Now, it probably will be a little quiet because probably a lot of you aren't doing that, and so that makes you feel a little like... Probably a lot of people watching by television, you're like thinking, maybe I'll see what else is on this morning. The Holy Spirit is the one who puts it all together for us. And not only that, it offends God when we leave Him out. He's more important than anything else. Until you learn that, you're going to be in sad shape.
Here's a garden. This represents the love of a relationship and all the potential of a relationship. And this, of course, represents the offenses that are going to come into your relationship. Now, you don't have to be married to get a whole lot out of what I'm saying right now. This will apply to anybody in your life who is important to you and show you exactly what the enemy will try to do. Like, for instance, I don't know if Stephanie's a good cook or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good. And I was talking to my mom this morning. No, my mom lives here in Charlotte, and she reminded me of this story. It's just hilarious. It just shows how offenses can come. Because the question isn't, are offenses going to come into your relationship? That's not the question. They're gonna come. They're gonna come. The question is, what are you gonna do with them? That's what determines whether or not you keep a strong relationship with God, with others, with yourself. So my mom was telling me they were at my father's mom's house, so my grandmother, my dad's mom's house for Thanksgiving, and she made some stuffing. Do you know what that? Yeah. And when she and my grandmother made some stuffing, and the way I understood the story, my dad was sitting there eating his mom's stuffing, and while he's eating the stuffing, he says, trying to give a compliment to his mom, he's like, Mom, nobody makes stuffing like you. I mean, other people try to make stuffing, but nobody can make it like you. And my mom is thinking, while he's saying, nobody makes stuffing like you, my mom is thinking, and nobody is going to make stuffing for you except your mom, so you better invite your mom to be your cook if nobody makes stuffing like her. And my mom said, I didn't make that man stuffing on Thanksgiving for the next 6 years. And I said, can I tell the church that story? It's a good illustration. She said, yes, as long as you clarify that I really do make better stuffing than your grandmother. Now, I got you holding that because he says this stuff. He says these unintentional things because men are stupid and we just say stuff, we don't realize what we're saying, and we just say stuff. And maybe Dan hasn't done it yet. To me, he looks like an intelligent man, but he's gonna say something and it will be unintentional in his mind. He's just saying it. He's just saying something. He just says stuff. Or sometimes it's not what they say, it's what they don't do. It's an unmet expectation. That is the breeding ground of offenses in relationships. Unmet expectations. And let me tell you the breeding ground of unmet expectations, unexpressed expectations. So you gotta learn how to talk to people. Otherwise, like, let's say growing up in Stephanie's house, birthdays were a big deal. But maybe at Dan's house, they didn't make a big deal about birthdays. Because hey, what did you do? You didn't do anything on your birthday. You were just born. So maybe on birthdays at Dan's house, nobody celebrates the fact that you just came out into the world like it was some great achievement. But Stephanie wakes up and her mom used to make her pancakes on her birthday, and her dad had a special song that he would sing. I don't know, I'm making this stuff up. I never met Stephanie and Dan before. I was making a scenario. And so Dan wakes up on the birthday and he's gonna take her out to P.F. Chang's that night because that's her favorite place, she said. But now it's morning time and it's like 7 and there's no pancakes and there's no special song and there's no thing. And so now all of a sudden it's the first birthday they spend as a married couple, and he wakes up and gives her a little kiss and goes to work.